Hi, friends. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Kim, and we'd like to welcome everybody into a special episode of Holistically Curious. Today, Teresa and I will be chatting with Tianna Roser. Tianna Roser is a certified clinical hypnotist and a Reiki master teacher based out of Austin, Texas. Tianna specializes in catalyst coaching, Reiki and Reiki training, hypnosis, past life, and life between lives regression.
That's right, Kim. And we're definitely going to have to ask Tianna to visit with us again because of all of her services. They sound so interesting. But today we're going to be discussing one of our favorite topics, which is life between lives regression. First, we'll touch on what past lives regression is, and then really dive into life between lives regression. So welcome in, Tianna. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited, Tianna.
Welcome.
So am I. Great.
Could you give our listeners an overview of what past life regression is and then maybe what life between lives regression is?
Sure. Both types of regression are spiritual regression, which is spiritual hypnosis, past life regression. The way that I do it, it's a 2-hour long session during which we explore one of your former lifetimes. We'll go in and out of different points of that lifetime, so different ages, different scenes, and explore to get an idea of what that life was about. And then finally that culminates in the death scene. So then after the point of death, we look back at what were the lessons of that life. Is there anything that needs to be healed or cleared from that life? How does that lifetime relate to your current lifetime? Are there any individuals that are in your life now that were in that lifetime, and so forth? And so that's the whole process of the past life regression, really to help heal, clear, or understand things that may be affecting you in your current life.
What are some of the reasons that people come to you for past life or life between lives regression?
Oh, wow. I mean, some people say they're just curious, which I get, but I always know that even if the person themselves just thinks they're curious, that the soul always wants to help them in some way. So it's never going to be just to satisfy someone's curiosity. There's usually a lot of depth to the session. A lot of people come for past life regression. It could be to understand or clear a pattern that they're repeating in this lifetime, to understand sort of the karmic relationships with people that are in their life right now, to connect to different aspects of self and create more harmony and balance, or connect to gifts or skills that you had in another lifetime. There's so much insight that you can get from kind of just from walking in another person's shoes, even though they were yours before. Now, the life between lives is a much deeper session. So the life between lives, whereas the past life regression is 2 hours, the life between lives is 4 hours or more. It's a very in-depth session. And a lot of people come for this session because they're really wanting to get deeper answers to their, important questions. One of the most important ones that a lot of people will ask themselves at some point is, what is my soul's purpose? Why am I here on the planet? And am I learning what I'm supposed to be learning? Or even, what the heck is going on in my life, and why is this my life? And, trying to get some insight and understanding about this life, trying to find direction moving forward. The life between lives is a chance to experience spirit realm. And so that alone is really, really beautiful. It's connecting to this space of divine love and this place where you know that you're safe and you're okay and you're loved and supported. And so that in itself can be really healing. But the structure of the life between lives is that, so first of all, Michael Newton, which I know you both read his books. Yeah, his books are great. His first book, Journey of Souls, that book was one of the first books that I read when I first got on this spiritual path, I guess, when I first had a kind of an awakening. And it just made so much sense to me. And it just really, really resonated with me. And I remember thinking, that guy has coolest job. And I never I was like, man, wouldn't that be great to be doing that all day? Wow, that would be a wonderful life. And I really couldn't imagine at that point, because, I wasn't that far along on my path. I couldn't imagine that I'd be doing this work one day. But he's the one that really created this process. I'm sorry, am I going too far into that? No. Okay. So it's funny in our training, because, so Michael Newton unfortunately passed last September 2016, but he left such a legacy behind. And he created the Michael Newton Institute, where people can continue to get this kind of training to do these services. And at the Newton Institute, that's where I learned this process. So first, there is a very long induction. The induction is the beginning part of a hypnosis session, where you're letting go of your outer physical focus and you're going really deeply inward. And so the induction is like, I don't know, an hour long. Michael Newton, I guess, said that we bore people into trance. So that's a big chunk of the first part, to really get people to let go of this, outer focus and go deeper within.
On that point, do you find that the people that come to you are ready, so they're more open and able to be put in that state?
That's a really good question. So in training, we were told that it's best to have a prerequisite of a successful past life regression first. Remember, that's a 2-hour-long session in order for someone to then come and do the life between lives. And it really is best, because not everybody is ready to do the 4-hour life between lives, or not everyone's even ready to do the 2-hour past life regression. If somebody wants to do this, a couple of the things that I would ask them, it's not necessary that you've meditated or done hypnosis before, but it's definitely helpful. It is a much more right brain process. So it's, we live in a very left brain world. It's very structured and outcome focused and black and white. And this is a very abstract, open, heart-centered process. And so it's about what makes somebody a good candidate is if you can trust, allow, let go. And that's not always easy. We might even really want to have this experience, but we might be trying too hard to have this experience. And so the people that have the most challenge are the really strong left brainers. I mean, but that being said, I've definitely guided a lot of, here in Austin, like a lot of engineers and techie types into the process. But people who have a hard time relaxing, people who have a hard time trusting and allowing themselves to be guided, people who have maybe some hidden fears, maybe from childhood programming from religion or so forth. Those are some of the challenges that might come up. And a lot of those can still be worked through. If those roadblocks come up during the past life regression, a lot of times we're able to work around it or work through it. But before somebody, invests this time and energy and money into the life between lives, we do the past life regression first.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So after you do like an hour-long induction, do you take them through one of their death experiences, and then would it be almost like a near-death experience, like that, like somebody who's experienced an NDE or a near-death experience? Did they go through that whole process of like seeing the light and all of that?
It's amazing. It really, really is so similar to people's near-death accounts. In fact, I haven't owned a TV in forever, but I got to liking on the Lifetime channel app. There's that I Survived Beyond and Back. I Survived Beyond and Back is a show that just has people's near-death experiences. They're all near-death experiences. And I just really love watching it for some reason. Because everyone's talking about, these are people that didn't even believe in this, and then they clinically died, and then they, go. And it's so interesting how much that parallels the experience that people have in the life between lives. In fact, the Newton Institute is now doing research with someone from the university, I think it's University of Virginia. They're doing research to see about those parallels between the near-death experience and the life between lives. Yeah, it's very exciting. But before we do that part, so we do the 1 hour long induction, and then we do what Michael Newton called memory warm-ups. So we go back into a couple points in your childhood in this life. We make sure not to go back into any traumatic times because we're not here to do, therapy on that.
Sure.
So just kind of in a happy or neutral point, a couple points. So we're going back in time, back, and then we go to, like, let's say when you're 9 in your house that you lived in, and we just kind of explore that a little bit. And then again, an earlier point, let's say when you're 6. And so we do a few of those, and then we go into your mother's womb before you were born and
Wow.
tap into that. Yeah, and that can be really interesting for some people too.
I imagine.
And that's the launching point. From the mother's womb, we go to the lifetime just before this one. So whereas in the past life regression, you could go to any lifetime throughout your whole soul's evolution, not necessarily the one right before this one in chronological time. But in the life between lives, we're going to go to the past life chronologically right before this one, not to explore in depth the way that we do in a past life, but really because it's just going to be the jumping point, because we're going to end up going to the death scene of that life. And then that's the jumping point to spirit realm.
Okay, that makes sense. So instead of just regressing back, you take it from the death of the previous life into this life.
Right.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because the sort of dying process, or at least the process from the point of death, is such a fascinating part of the whole life between lives.
Yeah, and it's, it's amazing. And I say this about past life regression also. We have so much fear in our culture around death. It's so amazing to see people's faces or just to hear their expressions when they die in a former lifetime, because it really is this release. It's not, it's going from a state of being in this, heavy meat body or whatever you want to call it, to this expansive state of freedom. Now, definitely, depending on how we died, or, if we felt that we had unfinished business or something, we might, have remorse or so forth. But the actual process of releasing the body and becoming free from the body is a really, peaceful, joyous, freeing experience for the most part.
Kim shared on the first episode that when our father passed away, he smiled that instant in such joy, I think 3 times, Kim.
Right.
Just utter joy. So that gave us a lot of comfort. And knowing that there are lives between lives is very comforting to us.
I think that's the importance of your work, not necessarily just with the one-on-one with other people, but getting the word out to everyone about what you do, because it's making people understand that there's no need to be fearful of death, that it is really just a transformation.
Yeah, that's one of the big benefits of going through one of these processes, is really releasing the fear of death. And going back to what we were talking about before about the near-death experience, it's amazing. Over and over again, they all say that same thing, is that it was hard for them to come back in their body in this life. They didn't want to come back. They felt so happy, so loved, in incredible bliss in that state. And so these people that died and came back, it was depressing or traumatic to come back. And yeah, so this freeing from the fear of death is a really powerful experience and a wonderful benefit.
You mentioned that, and I definitely can understand that. I'm just curious, do you ever have clients that experience that? So they go through And I know we'll get into further what it's like in that life between lives, but like, did they ever have that experience where the session is done and they're like, I don't want to come back from that place. I want to stay there.
All the time, all the time. It happens like that, and I feel bad. Like of course,
Right.
eventually I need to bring them back, but it really happens a lot, really a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Wow.
it's so beautiful because like, yeah, you can just see in their face. It's almost like, how children have such a pure expression, and as adults we mask some of we don't purely express our emotions, but a lot of times in those sessions people have such a pure, like, childlike look of wonderment almost on their face, or sometimes tears stream down, and you're just full of excitement and bliss and joy and remembrance.
Wow. What a great job. Just to be near that, and be able to feel that. And I'm sure you almost feel that energy emanating from them.
Actually, yeah, I was going to mention that, especially because I do energy work, so I'm,
Mm-hmm.
very sensitive. Yes, there is such a beautiful energy that comes into the room. So I do feel really, thankful, or
Mm-hmm.
that I get to be a part of that, because you can feel it, and it fills up the space, and it's very pure.
Wow. Very cool.
So, can you tell us then, from that second that you've brought them to the end of their most recent past life, are there commonalities? I mean, what's the process? What are they experiencing when you bring them just past that ending?
Yeah. Okay. And so there are commonalities throughout this whole process. There are commonalities, but there's also, different souls, whether they're at a different point in evolution or whether they just have a different focus or type of soul, will kind of go through the process a little bit differently. So at this point, they start to let go of the physical body, and sometimes there needs to be, they try to, like, reassure their loved ones that are let go, and you might have even felt that,
Mm-hmm.
when your loved one passed, that their energy sticks around for a while, and some of them are just really like, yay, woo, I'm free, and they're ready to go, and they're like going off, and they're like, I know where to go. And some of them are very slowly letting go and beginning to move away from the physical and shift into the expansiveness of their soul and move into the spirit realm. And at some point, oftentimes loved ones or a spirit guide for some they'll come and guide them throughout that process. So some souls already remember as soon as they come out of their body where to go, and some need, a little bit of guidance, and so it's different each time.
Is it possible for you to have a sense, or whether the souls that know immediately where to go and how to transition, as opposed to the ones who don't, whether they are older souls, or is that a thing, an older soul or a newer?
It is a thing. Sometimes, people have a certain connotation with the idea, older soul and newer soul. You could say more experienced soul, or it depends, you could say more evolved, but that again might have sort of a negative connotation. But yeah, generally, if you've come here and back so many times, then you remember, because those are the ones who remember when they're alive, right? The ones who remember that when they're alive are the ones that have been around a lot. And that's why you can remember while you're in this heavy physical dense world, in this heavy physical dense body. And then, as you said, the newer or less experienced souls, they'll forget who they are spiritually when they're in the physical body, and then they will sort of be disoriented for a bit while they come out of the physical body also. So I would say that's a pretty good correlation, but you could be a very experienced soul and still have someone, like a guide that wants to just come and greet you when you leave the physical body. So just because someone shows up doesn't mean you're not a very evolved soul.
Right. I'm hoping that I have someone show up for me, whether I remember my way home or not. I think it would be very special.
Yeah. Well, and you hear about that with the near death experience. It's people are constantly saying that, maybe it was like their grandmother or their dog even on the other side, or, so forth, or guides or things like this. That's very common.
Kim and I have both done some hospice volunteering, and one thing that I've really found is that a lot of the patients that I worked with seem to be seeing something that we weren't seeing. And it seemed like not all of them, but so many of them that I have this great comfort that there will be people to greet you.
Yes, that even before I did this work with a couple of my family members, I remember being told stories about, and these were family members that weren't spiritual at all, but that when it came close to their time of death, other relatives came and visited them, and they said that even though it wasn't something they believed in. So it's a very common experience that I think if people are not around death, they don't realize how common it is, or even when it happens, people kind of dismiss it as illusion or delusion or whatnot, but it's really, really a common experience with dying people.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that people that come for a session typically are souls that have been here many times? Do you find that I wonder how many come that maybe they haven't been here before? How many come that this is their first life? What if they don't have a past life?
Well, it could be their first earthly life, and they might have, and I've
Mm-hmm.
definitely had a number of clients that have go into lifetimes in other realms or other planets, but it wouldn't be a very new soul just to incarnating in any shape or form would not at all be interested in this work, because when you're at that part of your evolution, you're brand spanking new, you've come from source into individuation, you're really, really drawn into the material things. So the ones on the planet that are, really drawn into material things won't be interested in this. And those tend to be the really newer souls.
Sure.
Tianna, I'm shaking my head as if I know all of this already.
You do, I'm sure.
But no, I don't. But it resonates so strongly that I'm like, oh yeah, I guess part of me knew that, although my mind did not.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So they get to that point where they're there and somebody's either there to greet them or helps them to that space where we go, whatever that dimension is. What do you find at that point? Is that, I know a lot of people talk about either having that where they review their life or they, or before like a panel of people or spirits that they discuss their lives or whatever. What have you found that happens?
Yeah, so when Michael Newton kind of stumbled into this work, he found that people, and he was very careful, he was very much kind of like a researcher type of a person. And so, he wanted to make sure that he wasn't influencing anything through his word choice and so forth. So he went in a very methodical, scientific sort of approach to exploring this work. And what he found was that there were a lot of commonalities coming from different people about what happens in spirit realm when we leave our physical body behind. And so he found that there were a number of different stations that people kept mentioning. So as we said, like being met by a guide or loved ones. Sometimes there is, and so these could all happen in different orders. And so each person will be different. But a lot of times, if the physical life was a very taxing one, or the death was a very difficult or traumatic one, there can be a healing station after you leave where you're kind of releasing all of that residue. You're letting it go. And so you get cleared energetically, spiritually. There could be, like you said, a life review with your guide, kind of in an intermediate place, or, kind of in a waiting place. You might first do that life review with your guide, or it could be, as you mentioned, there's also a council of elders, and they might call it by a different name, but a similar role. It's kind of this group of wise beings who watch over your evolution as a soul. So you could go before the Council of Elders, and they're really there. They're not there to judge you. They're there to assist you in having more insight and understanding about your soul's evolution. It could be there that you go. Also, there's your soul group or your soul family, however you want to call it. But those souls that are sort of like your classmates, they're kind of on the same level of you, of same level of awareness or same focus of interest. And oftentimes, there'll be some of those souls that are in your lifetime because you kind of come into the life with a plan and okay, you play that role, I'm going to play this role, and then we can kind of try to grow in this way through these different roles. And so we kind of set that up with our soul group. And so that's a really exciting time sometimes for some people to go and connect with their soul group, and just the love, just the way that you, well, depending on your family, obviously you guys are sisters, so you guys are close, but
Yes.
the way that you can, if you have a loving family or if you have a close-knit family, that way that you feel when you connect with them, there's just so much understanding and connectedness, and people will feel that with their soul group. And then there's also just all the other things that you might do in spirit realm. So the more that you continue in your evolution, the more likely that you might have some, I hate to say responsibility because that doesn't sound very fun, but you might have some role or roles that you play in spirit realm also, the things that you do when you're not in the physical.
Sure.
Actually, that does sound fun to me.
Right.
I would like a hobby when I'm in spirit.
Yeah, there are just, just like, there's so many different types of people there. That's how many different types of souls there are. There are souls that love to travel and explore in different realms. There are souls that love to create with sound and light or music. And there are souls that love to research and study and all these different, possibilities.
Wow. Yeah, I want to work in the library. I want to be.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm already signed up. That's where I want to go.
You can work in the library. I just want to hang out there.
Okay, that's
the
fine.
knowledge. Oh my gosh.
That's a common experience that people have, that they go into a type of library and a book their guide will bring out a book and it will be of their different lifetimes, and they might flip through it and look at the ones that are relevant to what they need to know at that time.
Is future life something then that's discussed or looked at in the life between lives?
Well, future life as in, because the life between lives, we're going to the in-between period before your current life. So do you mean the planning for this life, or do you mean other lifetimes beyond? Okay.
Oh gosh, maybe both. Do we plan one at a time, or?
So far, that's what I've seen. But I mean, just because that's what I've seen doesn't mean that that's all that's possible. But yeah, that's what I've seen so far, is that sometimes the souls will go to the time, the place where they look at possible lifetime or possible body choices, and kind of do this selection of where they're going and who they're going to incarnate into, and how that would provide an opening for what they're wanting to learn and grow. So you had more than one option than to be in the bodies that you're in now, and you chose these bodies.
Oh my gosh. Well,
and we chose each other as sisters?
I'm pretty sure, yes.
Oh my gosh. Big mistake. Huge.
so, I mean, thank you.
I meant for you, not for me.
I do think that kind of brings up then, I mean, is it a group decision if you have other members of your soul group with you in that particular life between lives? Is it something you decide, okay, let's do this together again, or?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you're deciding for yourself, and then you might say like, hey, I think I'm going to do this. Do you want to come join? Kind of something like this. And like, well, how would that work? And you can absolutely, with your, not just with your own soul group, but there'll be other periphery groups that you sometimes work with. And depending on the kind of experience that you're wanting to have or the way that you're hoping to grow, you might choose in one lifetime to not be with your soul group because it's time to kind of move out of your comfort zone and branch out in a different way. Or there's all these, but it's definitely by free will. You can't like force your sister to be your sister.
Kim is the one up there
Darn.
saying, hey, you want to do this? Because she's usually the one that tests things out and we all jump on board behind her.
Uh-huh.
So yeah.
So Tianna, I have a burning question. So what I'm curious about is, people sometimes, not very often, but occasionally hear of people having a negative near-death experience. And I'm curious if anybody ever comes in and has a negative life between lives experience.
I have not had that experience. When somebody has a near death experience, it all happens, it's not being guided, facilitated by somebody, right? It's all happening kind of unexpectedly outside of their control. When I've seen some of those negative near death experiences, oftentimes it was a wake up call for somebody who was really not on a spiritual path or not connected to their higher consciousness. And the near death experience, the negative, near death experience was a wake up call so that they could see that they were on the wrong track. The people that come for the life between lives tend to be people who are on some kind of a spiritual journey. And so if they weren't believing in spiritual things at all, they wouldn't come to me. And so I don't know if that's what you mean by negative. So those are usually, hasn't it been the people that were not believing in anything spiritual, and then they had this experience and then it woke them up?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, like you said, it's kind of a wake up call. And, when you actually do pass, it's not just a wake up call type near death experience, it's an actual death experience. Rather than focusing, I think, you have your counsel or whatever, they focus on guiding you in a positive way. So that makes sense to me, that you wouldn't go your life between life and it would be focused on what you did wrong. It's more like, okay, this is what you learned and this is how you can move on and learn, do things maybe in a different way or learn differently or whatever, rather than focusing on punishing you for what you did incorrectly.
Right. It's really, in the spirit realm, it's really non-judgmental. It's very accepting. It's very, very love-based. I think sometimes when people have a negative near-death experience, because what can happen when you die is that whatever your beliefs are, if you strongly believe that there's a hell and you're going there, you could experience that because that's what you believe. So there is like there's the astral realm, there's negative areas there because whenever we put our energy, we're sort of creating. And so if there's sort of a hell because people believe there's a hell, and but that's not where we really go. And so even those who go, did you see that movie What Dreams May Come?
Yes.
With Robin? Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of like that. Like sometimes, I mean, I've had people have a past life experience where they committed suicide, and when people commit suicide, they have a lot of guilt right after. Right when they die, they're just like, what did I do? And there's a lot of guilt and remorse. And a lot of times they don't believe that they deserve to go to a loving spiritual realm. And so they believe that all that exists for them is, a hell-like state or an in-between state. And that might be what they sort of imagine for a while because they believe that. But there's always beings of light waiting for them to reach out for them. That's always there, but we also have our free will. And so because outside of the physical, time doesn't really exist. Time is a construct of the physical 3D reality. And so for however long, we could sort of, you can also, when you die, be sort of attached to the earthly experience and kind of hang out for a while and not want to move on. But eventually that love and that light draws you to it. It becomes very attractive, and either you're in anguish and you reach out for it, or you just become less and less interested, attached to the physical, and move out of that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me.
And so people come to the Life Between Lives, they bring questions that they want answered. And this
Mhm.
is a wonderful benefit, is to gain this higher perspective. And that might come from their guide. It might come from their own, when they leave their body and they shift into their soul consciousness, they just begin to have a, higher perspective. Or it might come from their council of elders. And so a lot of times the questions might be like, oh, why did this happen when I was a child? Or, something like that, where they can get a lot of healing and insight from the questions that they bring and getting the higher perspective in the answers that they receive.
Tianna, when your clients are experiencing their life between lives, or maybe I should say afterwards, is that something that they fully remember the experience? Or they're not completely like asleep in a trance? Or am I wrong?
No, you are correct. That's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that people think that hypnosis, and of course regression is a type of hypnosis, that it's like sleep. It's like meditation. It's a relaxed inner focus state. So most likely you will remember most everything. Of course, with the Life Between Lives, it's like a 4-hour long session. And so, you might, pretty much remember, but it's been a long time and a lot of information came through. So I record everything, and you have the recording after. But yeah, it's common, your conscious mind is not going away. So when we go to sleep, our conscious mind totally turns off, and then we are in the sub or superconscious realm. In regression, the conscious mind volume knob is turned down, but not off. And it depends on you. How much can you relax, trust, allow, let go, whether that turns down a little bit or it turns down a lot.
And is that something, can you achieve that state remotely, say through Skype or telephone?
Theoretically, yes, because it's all, you're closing your eyes and you're listening to somebody talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no reason why you couldn't do it remotely. But it really, and I've done a number of remote past life regressions. I think with the shorter, the 2-hour long session, it's more accessible. The Life Between Lives, I find it seems to be better to do it in person. I'm not sure if I think that when we were trained at the Newton Institute, we were sort of, it was not recommended to do it that way. I think it's possible, but I haven't really explored it.
Yeah, because I would imagine, Tianna, it would be like, I'm a yoga teacher, or I have been in the past, and I know holding that space for people to do the work that they're doing. It seems to me like having you there and doing a session with you in the same space would be very important and valuable.
For that depth of work, I think it's very beneficial to have the person's presence there, for sure. Because then you could have distractions in the person's environment, and there is just kind of the rapport that gets built from being there in person.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's just paramount to any kind of healing work when you're working with somebody else, is having their energy help assist you and lift you up. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you record your sessions, because for people like me who have the memory of a gnat, like it wouldn't matter if it was a 15-minute session, I'd probably still forget half of it. So that's really nice.
Yeah, I'm glad, because I have the world's ugliest handwriting. So if I had to take notes the whole time, it wouldn't be good.
It works on so many levels, my friend.
Yeah, except for when the technology doesn't work and the batteries die and something weird happens, or
Yeah, that's called life. So
modern life. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So Tianna, I'm wondering, in your experience, have there been any particular sessions that you facilitated that have really stayed with you? Anything that, I don't know, was what you would consider the most interesting, or just touched you in a way beyond what some of the other ones did?
They're also unique and beautiful in their own way. For me, it's kind of the opposite. I think it's the commonalities that really touch me, that over and over again, over the years, really different people from really different backgrounds connect in that spirit realm, and they keep bringing the same messages through. It's always about love. Like people will come in and bring this whole list of questions like, why did my best friend, betray me in that business deal, blah, blah, all these things that seem really important to us in the 3D world.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get there in spirit realm. And so it's my job to make sure that their questions get asked, that the ones that they brought in. And then I'll ask the questions that they wrote. And over again in that state, they just laugh and they go, oh, that doesn't matter.
Wow.
And it's really beautiful because over and over again, everyone is about love. Love is what really matters. Love is the most important thing. Oftentimes, you keep hearing about slowing down and being present. No matter what the questions are that people ask, that's a common important thing to remember. Another important thing is about staying connected spiritually while we're here in the physical. And no matter what their question is, if they keep staying connected spiritually, they'll be on track. They'll figure it out. It'll be okay. And so it's really having this opportunity to, have the higher perspective, get out of the trees and see the forest from above, and to bring that back when they come back in the physical, and live the remainder of their life with that awareness and not to fall back asleep again.
I find that so comforting, and I think that I'm definitely ready for the next step. So selfishly, I'm happy that I have reason to go to Austin now and again.
You're ready to have a session, huh?
Because I'm just comforted by the theory so much that I just can imagine how much I'll get out of actually going through the two different types of sessions.
Well, just understanding what you just said, Tianna, about the lessons, it's that reminder that we need to have that relationship with spirit in our, everyday life, and understanding that really it's all about love and keeping that forefront in our minds. I mean, just think if everybody or the majority of the world had a session like that, how our world could change. Like, it's just that awakening and remembering that that's what our focus should be. That gives me goosebumps. If we could all do that, this world would be so different.
Yeah, when the client is in spirit realm, they feel and remember how loved and supported they are. When we come down here, we feel like we're a separate individual struggling on our own individual journey. And then you go there and you remember, like, oh no, there's this whole team that just loves me and is, wanting to help me. And we can bring that awareness, back into our waking life here in the third dimensional world. And it's very helpful.
Yes. I want a session too, Teresa. I am. So,
you are getting very sleepy.
I know, right? Let's just bring it. Come on, girlfriend. Let's just do this thing right now.
You are so well spoken.
Oh, thank you.
Just ideally suited, and we're so appreciative.
So, Tianna, thank you so much. I could listen to you for literally hours and hours and hours, but I know that we do need to wrap this up. This has been so fascinating, and I know I can't wait to schedule a session. Teresa's already said she can't wait.
I'm in.
We are both in. So, and I'm sure many of our listeners are ready to as well. And so I want to let our friends out there listening know that Tianna has generously offered a 10% discount off of her past life regressions or life between lives regression sessions. So if you mention our show, Holistically Curious, when you book your appointment, you will get 10% off, which is fantastic. So thank you so much for that, Tianna.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Yes, thank you for chatting with us today. And awesome.
Yeah, so friends, definitely check out Tianna's website at www.awakeningtransformation.com and follow her on her Facebook pages at Awakening Transformation and at Channeling Messages from Spirit.
And we'll post Tianna's special offer on our website and social media, as well as some information about past life regression workshop that she has coming up in October.
Thank you so much, Tianna. As always, thank you for listening, and we would be ever so happy for you to subscribe and leave us a review. And if you could only see the happy dance we do when we get a review, you would definitely leave one. So actually, it's probably better they don't see that happy dance on Teresa.
That's very true. But do you know what I think everyone should do right now?
I do. I think they should stay curious.
Stay curious. Bye.
Bye.